Cliffside back then had a really, really good park. People come from all over to play, and once you got to able to go play down the park, that was the biggest thing, because you'd have to sit there and wait to get any game, and then if you lost, it was over, and it taught you not to want to lose ever, you know.
What would you say is one lesson that you learned from Coach Carnesecca?
He was a wonderful, wonderful human being and coach. As far as what I learned coaching, we practiced more defense than anything.
What is something that you would tell to all basketball players?
If you're serious, you have to play. The opportunities now, watching, you put into it what you get out of it. You know, and I'm a firm believer in that, and you take a day off, somebody else is not taking a day off, trust me.
Before Steph Curry was pulling up from 35 feet, before ESPN highlights, and before NIL deals, there was a player that was changing the game. Tonight's guest scored 2,088 points in his high school career. And mind you, that happened in only 3 years of high school basketball. Yes, 3 years of high school basketball, 2,088 points. What's even more astonishing is there was no three-point line at the time. Our guest tonight, we're very proud, honored, and privileged to have Cliffside Park High School's all-time leading scorer, Tom Calabrese, here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom Calabrese.
Thank you.
And welcome to the Built Not Born podcast. I'm your host, Tom Mandile.
And I'm your co-host, Thomas Calabrese.
Let's jump right into it. Tom, when did you first realize that basketball should be something serious in your life?
I grew up in a basketball family. My dad played at St. John's and played 2 years in the NBA. Then I followed my brother play. He played at St. Joe's Montville, and that was it. I was hooked on basketball.
And your father won two state titles.
He won. Yes, he won 2 state titles. 1941 when he was a sophomore, and then 1943 as a senior. And he always told me that his best team he ever had was his junior, and they didn't win. But that's what he said to me.
Yeah, astonishing. And you and I always have conversations about how many shots players nowadays should be getting up, especially our own guys. How many shots do you think you got up when you were playing during your career?
I averaged anywhere from 20 to 25 shots. And I'll be honest, there were some games I shot a lot more, which, there were some games I shot like 30 shots and I wouldn't shoot well, but to get points, you have to score.
See, now, when you hear that number, 2,088 points in only 3 years of high school basketball, that's a staggering number. How do you feel when you hear that number now, so many years later?
When it happened in the Jamboree when I scored my 2,000 point, and I really didn't even know why they were stopping the game. I really didn't. And again, I was fortunate to play with really great teammates.
So it wasn't like Thomas when he had the balloons ready, he had the Fab Neighbor ready?
Nothing like that. And it was, back then only one other player had scored 2,000 points. That was Les Cason, and I believe he still has the most points.
And now let me ask you, with today's modern game, with the three-point shot being so significant, how do you think you would have fared in today's game with the three-point line?
That's a good question, Coach, because I tried to get to the foul line. I really did. And, I don't believe we took too many outside shots. You know what I mean? Everything was geared to, to get to the basket. But the one big difference is we scored a lot more points. I mean, team-wise. I mean, we'd lose games like 95, 94, 93, 92.
You almost getting to triple digits.
Yeah, really.
Now,
we've scored, hundreds a bunch of times.
Now, you mentioned about getting to the basket. I know that's another conversation you and I have about players getting to the basket. Now, you had a lot of points from the free throw line, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we were just looking at it. I believe it's close to like 600 points, somewhere right around there.
That's amazing.
It's like 550 points.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And, I'll be honest, I thought I shot better from the foul line. I guess it was like 82%, but...
I have to ask you, I have to interject here a little bit with about the foul line. So I know Thomas and I have had many conversations about when he shoots free throws. And one thing he always mentions is that he doesn't want to miss a free throw, because when he looks over at you, and he actually sent me a picture early this morning about there's one with you with your head in your hands. So tell me what's going through your mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think he should make every one, obviously, right? But he's probably the best foul shooter ever to come out of Cliffside. He's just got to get there a little bit more, Coach. He's got to get there more.
He's over 90%.
That's kind of like,
that's one of the best in the county.
I wouldn't think there's many people better.
No.
But I mean, I remember during COVID. Do you remember this, Dad? When he actually made like a chart. He printed out a chart, and every single day I had to shoot 100 free throws. So he made me start from where the basket was on the block, and I have to do like 3 up and down sprints because he wanted me to shoot while I was tired. So he'd open his trunk, he'd keep the clipboard, he'd have his pen, and he'd rebound for me, and I'd shoot 100 shots a day, and he'd track it. So sometimes I'd shoot like 8 for 10, and he'd be like, dude, like 8 for 10 is like, it's not that good. It's 80%. You're a 90% free throw shooter at your worst. So that really that was during COVID when I was 11 years old. So from then on, shooting 8 out of 10 was like terrible for me. So now I always expect 9 out of 10 or, 100% from the line.
So for all of our viewers out there, if you're asking yourself, how can you improve at the free throw line? What would you recommend, Thomas? Shooting tired?
Shooting tired is a big thing. I mean, not even just for, shooting free throws, like shooting in general, getting your run in, your cardio in, and then shooting right after, even after weightlifting, to see how it feels after being sore, lifting weights, and then shooting, all those things are huge. And if you want to be a successful athlete, especially in high school and in college, I recommend you do that.
Tom, now let me ask you, we were having a conversation earlier about some of the loud gyms and some of the raucous crowds throughout the entirety of basketball in New Jersey, especially in Bergen County. What was the loudest gym that you remember, or the most memorable game that you remember?
We had a huge rivalry with Englewood. They came into the league.
Are you talking about Dwight Morrow?
Yeah, Dwight Morrow. Yes, I'm sorry. That was the only Englewood. I'm sorry. But, they came into the league my junior year. Rutherford was in the league, and then Englewood went from the NHL into the BCSL. And so first time we got to play, and we opened up in Englewood, and it was, we walked in, it was sold out, and it was a really tough atmosphere, walking into Englewood, and we got beat pretty easily. And then in the next time we played in my junior year, we played in Cliffside, and I think it was the most crowded I've ever seen a Cliffside gym, the most crowded, and we lost at the buzzer because Willoughby, he was only a sophomore. He was up over the box and just tipped it in, right off of the backboard, and you couldn't dunk back then. So we lost by 1, and then we played him in the state tournament, and then we ended up beating him in the state tournament in the sectional semifinals.
Excellent. Now, let me ask you, what game stood out to you the most personally? Was there a game of significance that stood out to you? Whether importance or points or
the Englewood games, really,
the series. Really?
Yeah, we played them 6 times. We split 3-3. And they had they were big. We were not big. They had 6'7", 6'8", 6'6", 6'5", and they had a kid that went right from high school to the pros.
And you want to speak about him briefly, because that's going to segue into
first Moses Malone, then Billy Willoughby, and then Darryl Dawkins. They were the same year, 75, I think they went. I think if they were better coached, he just stayed outside and shot, but if he was ever, again, he was up over the box as a sophomore. He could jump, he could shoot. I showed Tommy some clips of when he was with the Rockets against the Lakers, right?
He blocked.
It was really, really good. I mean, the guy was, he was a pro player,
And now, one of those games, Michigan State came to watch him, correct?
Correct. That was when we beat him in Englewood in my senior year. Yeah, that was an interesting game because there was gas shortage back then, so you had to go with the JV team. You had to take one bus, and so we had to sit there and watch the JV team getting killed, and they sold out. It was sold out where they made us wait outside, and our coach, who was the best coach, Coach Talamini, said, he told him, if you don't let us in, we're leaving because we already beat you guys once, So it was, then we had to sit through that, and then, the coach finally brought us in the locker room at halftime, and game was, we were down about 11, 13 points, and then I did get a technical, and I think that's the only technical I ever got.
Why'd you get the tech?
I thought I got fouled, and I was backpedaling back, and I said to the referee, when are you going to call something? He said, okay, you want me to call something? Boom, our technical. And but right after that, we came back, and we ended up making up 11 and beating them by 11. So
excellent.
And then after the game, there was, they were all the schools in the country were looking for Willoughby. Actually, he signed to go to Kentucky.
That was the #1 team in the country at that time, right?
Yeah. And so their coach from Michigan State came in our locker room, and he said, I came to watch Willoughby play, but we're interested in you. But that was the last that I really heard back from that.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that because Michigan State at the time, they had Magic Johnson.
Yeah,
correct?
they had Magic Johnson, and then that was the same year we lost in the Final Eight. We could have went to that. St. John's could have went to that. It had Michigan State, Indiana State, DePaul, and Penn who beat us.
And we're going to jump into that right now. So talk about St. John's and that recruitment process, and obviously legendary Hall of Fame coach Lou Carnesecca.
We had ties to St. John's because my dad went there. And my dad had ties to St. John's, and him and Coach were classmates. And my father used to tell me that Coach used to referee the scrimmages.
What was it like during school? Like you're in school, you're in class, but you got Willoughby later. Like, what was that like?
It was funny because my senior, I was the only senior really that played,
Right.
and so I used to tell them, well, who's going to beat us? We're going to beat every one of these teams, and they actually really believed in me, and I believed we were going to beat them. I said, no, I'm ready, but I just knew we were in. They were really good, and we had beaten them twice, and they just
It's hard to beat teams 3 times when you played them 3 times in a year.
Yeah, and
It's not easy.
They had size, Coach. They were big.
And basketball's a game. Sometimes you miss a great shot and you make a bad shot. So
Yeah.
Now, speaking about St. John, so what would you say is one lesson that you learned from Coach Carnesecca, whether it be on or off the course, something that really sticks out to you?
He was a wonderful, wonderful human being and coach. As far as what I learned coaching, defense was, we practiced more defense than anything, really. Defense, always played a man-to-man, never really played zone. We once in a while went to a 1-3-1 half-court trap, but defense was big. Being in shape was big, and again, it was basically 3 against 5 because point guard didn't get many shots and one forward didn't get many shots. He was there to play defense. Point guard had to run the team just like he'd run down the court. Back then, he'd chase you down the court. You know what I mean? And tell you what to do. So, what else I learned a lot of St. John's is screen. The game became screens. Screens became very important. You had to screen down, screen across, get over screens.
It's great that you're speaking about those topics because screening, defense, because nowadays it seems like everybody just wants to score. Everybody just wants to roll the ball out, go score as many points as possible. Don't worry about defense. Don't get back on defense. Cherry pick, so to speak. So that's why it's great for our viewers and our listeners to understand.
The game has changed where, guys get past their guy and then don't take a 12-footer, a floater, and they throw it back out, when nobody's even picking up. I mean, me personally, I'd take the shot. I mean, I'm sorry, but I would,
I just want to know, because the game is so different nowadays, right? Like, the way people, like teams practice and stuff. Like, what was it like? What were your practices like before games, for big games?
It was different because we used to play. I'm talking about high school. We used to play Tuesdays and Fridays, so we would only day of the week we'd be off would be a Saturday. We'd practice Sunday, Monday, play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, play Friday. Where this now you guys just play Tuesdays and Thursdays
And Saturdays. Sometimes we get
but
3.
there's only really one day to prep, right? Which I find very hard. I mean, and Coach Calabrese was a very tough coach, a really good coach, and practices were really hard. They were hard practices.
Can you describe to all our viewers what that rivalry was like, Cliffside Englewood? Like give us like a vivid picture of what the gym looked like and what the fans were doing during the game, before the game.
Again, we were 3-3. We lost. We were 1-2 my junior and 2-1 my senior. When we beat them in Englewood, we had beaten them early in Cliffside. Then we had to go play them in Englewood. After the game, we had to stay there for 2 hours. All big fight broke out. The same thing happened when they came to Cliffside. I got to admit, it was no different. You know what I mean?
So you said your most memorable games in Cliffside were the Englewood ones.
Yeah, and then when we played Memorial in the Christmas tournament a couple of times, they had a great player, Jackie Galoon, first team All-State. I was actually first team All-State with him. Went to South Carolina, had a really great career, and very good friend of mine. Sadly, he passed away 10 years ago, but it was like a little Pete Maravich. I mean, really, really good. And he games against them, we used to play Memorial. Coach was good about one thing. We used to play Hudson County teams before the league started, right? We'd play Emerson, we'd play Weehawken. And Weehawken was good, guys. And we'd play Memorial, right? And then in the Christmas tournament, St. Peter's Prep. So it was a good Christmas tournament. Teaneck, St. Peter's Prep, Memorial, and us.
All right, so obviously those were the most memorable games in in high school, but what about in college? What were your favorite games to play in college?
Just playing in college was good. You know, coming out of high school, people thought I picked the wrong school. You know, that's, you know, because
Why'd they think that?
well, because they didn't think I'd play. You know, and at St. John's, they were the number 2 winningest program in the country back, you know, at that time, right behind Kentucky. So I had to sit out a year because you know, the grades were not very well. You know, so I had to really sit out a year. And then you know, my freshman year, we had a freshman team. You know, we had guys on scholarship that, you know, he kept us together on a freshman team. And, you know, a little at a time, he brought us up to the varsity. I finally got in a few games, started going on road trips. I got to play, we played Indiana in the first round of the NCAA tournament in Notre Dame. Back then, they only picked 32 teams. And that was the last team to ever go undefeated in Indiana. And I got to play the last, you know, 8 minutes. And then in college, you know, it was like the Big East without playing each team twice a year. You know, you played the same.
There was no Big East back then, right?
No, there was none.
Would you play teams twice in a year?
No. You know, like, you know, we played Georgetown one year and then played them. If we played them home, then we played them on the road. The next year we played, you know, the same teams you played. You know, Syracuse, Boston College, the same teams. We did go to play, you know, we played in a couple of good tournaments. We played, every year I was there, we played the number 1 team in the country. Freshman year, we played Indiana twice.
Who'd Indiana have?
They had like 6 pros. They had Quinn Buckner, Kent Benson, Wilkerson. They had 6 pros. Abernathy. Then in my sophomore year, we played San Francisco down in Hawaii. They had Bill Cartwright, Winfred Boynes, James Hardy, Chubby Cox. They were all pros. Then my junior year, we played Kentucky. In Kentucky in the Christmas tournament. We kind of got killed, but you know, we had a really
Kentucky
good
have?
Kentucky had Jack Givens,
Pros? They were all pros?
all pros. Yeah. Kyle Macy, Truman Clater, and then my senior year we played Duke twice, and we beat Duke twice that year. So we played. I was fortunate to play the number 1 team in the country.
But let me, but speaking to like some of our younger viewers, obviously these are some lessons that you've instilled in your son now. But what is something that you would tell to all basketball players if you had to speak to a group of basketball players right now, in high school? What do you think is the biggest message you could give to them?
If you're serious, I mean, I don't think you could. I mean, I don't think you could do it part-time. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you have to play, you know, I mean, the opportunities now. Watching, you know, Tommy and the kids, you know, younger and I mean, they're unbelievably well trained more than we were. You know, just think about it. We wore Chuck Taylors to play. You got to put into what you get out of it. You know, and I'm a firm believer in that. And you know, I always tell him, and I was always told, look, you take a day off, somebody else is not taking a day off. Trust me.
And that holds true for any era. And that's something that Thomas spoke about the last time. About one message that he definitely took from you is that he always says that whenever when he's sleeping, somebody else is working.
That's
and that's his mindset.
You know, and you can never think you're that good either. Never, because nobody's that good. You always could get better at anything you do. You know, I think so.
What do you feel about the shot clock right now that was just passed in high school basketball?
Oh God, I think it's a good idea. I mean, you know, I never played with a shot clock. Even in college, didn't have a shot clock. But
You didn't have a shot clock in college?
No.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. At that time, there was a shot clock in the NBA, though?
Look, yeah, there was always a shot clock in the NBA, 24/7 clock. But, you know, there was times where we used to play Princeton. Princeton would hold the ball and go backdoor on you. You know, they were very...
Super fundamental, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, I remember playing Princeton, and the practices were the hardest. Coach would be throwing chairs, throwing his head of practice. You know, you can't get beat backdoor. You know, really, I mean, you know...
And did you guys get beat backdoor?
A couple of times, but the one year, my sophomore year, we really beat them easily, really easily. And you know, that's one game. If you would have told me, you know, somebody, you know, people always ask you, "What do you think, you're going to win this game?" I said, "Yeah, we're definitely going to beat Princeton." You know, and they were good.
Because you guys were that prepared for them.
Oh God, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, really.
If you could change one game, looking back on it, high school or college, which one would it be?
Oh God, there's a lot.
There's a lot of
Really, there's a lot of them. But
too many to think of, but there was one that really stinks.
well, you know what? My senior at St. John's, the last game, we're playing Penn, and
It's in the national NCAA
Final Eight.
tournament?
It was in the Elite Eight down in Greensboro, I want to say. But Coach said the first guy that has a good shot, take it. And I had like a good shot, and I missed. But so then they got we had a tip and 2 tips, and we just couldn't put it in. But if I could have made one shot, that would have been the shot, because I really believe we were better than Penn, and that would have put us in. I think put
Final
us in
Four.
Final Four.
And who would you guys have played?
We would have played Michigan State, and they killed Penn. We would have gave them a much better game because we had more talent.
You would have been more prepared. Coach would have had you guys more prepared. And stuff.
Yeah.
Now let me fast forward now to pretty much current day, but a few years ago. So you're walking in the gym for the first time to watch your son play high school basketball in the same gym that you dominated in. What is that feeling like? As a parent, knowing the success and obviously all the personal accolades you had throughout your career, and now you get to watch your son stepping into that gym.
I'm going to be honest with you. He, how did you say, his freshman year, I didn't know, did I think he was good enough? Absolutely. But, he's a freshman. I get it. You think he's good, but that's when I really knew that he was good. You know what I mean? The first game we played, it was in Mawa. And the next game was in Westwood. But
no, the next game was home against Paramus.
Oh, Paramus, where he killed Paramus, killed him. And then, I just, you watch, you just don't know how good he's going to be. But, right after his first game in the freshman, I saw he could play.
All of his successes on the court. The one thing that stood out to me, and I wasn't coaching back then, but I remember watching you against Westwood, and you came off of a monster game against Paramus the game before.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. You had about 7 or 8 threes. Now, what I'm watching from you on the bench is that you're not upset about playing time. You're not putting your head down. You're giving all of your teammates water. You're up high-fiving, even though you weren't getting as much playing time as you probably thought you could have, right? But you're doing all those little things, and that speaks to who you are as a person. That's a proud parent moment for me, because I'm looking at that, and I'm saying, if I'm a parent, if I'm watching this, that's what I want my son to embody.
Yeah.
He's not upset. Should he be on the court? Absolutely. But you're there making sure that every kid has water the second they come off the court. You're high-fiving. You're cheering them on. Whether it's a made or a missed basket, you're always there. So right there, right from that point, I said, this kid is special.
Yeah, I mean, I just try to have a winning mentality, like I don't care about, just like, points and, stats and stuff. Like I care about winning the most. So whatever's going to help my team win is what I'm going to do. If, they need water during the timeout, I'm going to give them water. I'm going to be the first guy up. And that was like my freshman year. That was just my mentality, because like we had a bunch of seniors that year. So I knew like I wasn't going to play, I wasn't going to start and just play the entire game like I do now. But, I just wanted to see my teammates, succeed and be the best that they can be. But that was just my mindset. And honestly, I wasn't doing it to like try and grab your attention or anything. Like that's just like my natural instinct.
You didn't even know I was there. I didn't. Top. I was
this is actually
watering. I wanted to
there.
report. Yeah, I was just there. Drove up to Westwood, and that was the first impression I got from you as an athlete. Because I saw you play a couple times, but on the court. But in terms of off the court, I'm like, wow, this kid is special. Now let's fast forward that a little bit now to his 1,000th point this year, right? So Tom, how do you feel now knowing that you and your son are both in that 1,000 point banner? That's got to feel pretty special.
Yeah.
Your name's at the top, 2,088, and now your son, I mean, I don't want to make any predictions here, but has a realistic chance to you guys be the top 2 scorers all time in Cliffside Park history.
It's a big deal, but I think winning games is, winning
That's
games.
more important.
It's much more important. I mean, you could look at the points after a game, you know what I mean? But as far as my expectations, he's exceeded them, since he was a freshman, and getting better. He's getting better. He's just got to get a little better. I think he has to get to the foul line a little bit more, because he shoots him so good, and and you could set up defenses. You could do a lot more things. But I'm just hoping he stays healthy and finishes the year off.
Yeah.
Is there any story that you could tell us about Thomas growing up? Because Thomas always gives you, so you were his driving force. That's what he's told us on our last episode, that you were the reason why he worked so hard. And he's always wanted to, not so much do right by you, but he always wanted to make a lasting impression with you. Like everything he does is because of you.
My father is always like, he's the guy who's motivated me the most as an athlete from a young age. He always tells me there's always someone out there that's working harder than you. And that always just stuck with me.
It's great to hear that as a parent, but is there one moment that stood out to you while Thomas was growing up that really said, you know what, my son's, bound to be one of the better players? Or better people, I should say, not even player, but just in terms of a person.
Yeah, it's, he has to grow up in a much more difficult atmosphere than I had to grow up. I mean, granted, my dad was the mayor, I get that, but there was no social media, and there was no cell phones. So my son and my daughter had to grow up, and they're in. People know who they are. You can't hide, you can't get away from it. So he handles it very well. So did my daughter, but I'm extremely, extremely proud of him because, it was easy 50 years ago. It was just much more easier than it is today.
So that's the one thing I would say about Thomas too. The one thing I'm most proud about him. Besides of all of his accolades on the court and, his drive for winning basketball games, who he is as a person. And that's why I always attested it to the parents, to you, to Donna, because both Thomas and Nina, they're just phenomenal people. At the end of the day, take everything else away, strip it all down. Who is he to his core? He's that kid that you want your son or daughter to raise up, well, your daughter included, but they are who you want your kids to grow up to be. They're respectful, they're classy, they always put other people's needs above their own. And that's something that I always look for as a parent myself for my two boys. So that's a true testament to you and Donna. So
thank you, Coach.
Kudos for that.
And also, good students, very good students.
Martial honors.
Something that I really, really wasn't. I don't mean, he takes, very serious. Back 50-something years ago, people didn't take it as serious as he does, but yeah, I'm very proud of both of them.
Why didn't you ever want to, or did you ever want to coach it? And why didn't you?
I coached right out of St. John's. I coached back then it was like bitty basketball. We practiced every night. I was a young guy, and then and I coached at St. Cecilia's for 2 years.
Which isn't a school anymore.
Right, it closed. It was in England, but it has a lot of history. I mean, Vince Lombardi coached there. He was the athletic director there. My first year I coached, we were like 3-18, and the next year we were 11-11. But it was a really small school. We played Don Bosco. We played St. Joe's Montvale. We played Queen of Peace. We played St. Benedict's. We played what's the Rutgers Prep. We play a lot of big schools.
State powerhouse.
Yeah, and we were 11-11.
But what about coaching at the collegiate level? You ever had that opportunity?
No, I never. After high school, my job took over, and that was after coaching St. Cecilia. So
at Cliffside Park High School, Tom Calabrese scored over 2,000 career points and was considered one of the top high school players in the country. That wasn't just scoring, that was precision, that was discipline, that was obsession. He went on to play for legendary Hall of Fame coach Lou Carnesecca at St. John's, and now, decades later, just as Tom did after his father, his son walks into the same exact gym. Same school, same pressure, same game. A 1,000-point scorer entering his senior season, and hanging inside Cliffside Park High School today are two Calabrese names on one banner, one family, 3 eras, one legacy. This is the Built Not Born podcast. And thank you, Tom, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.